So the county do some things, the city do others. From a kind of outside point of view, these are probably distinctions that don't really matter, but when you're engaging, they matter, that you're kind of dealing with the right part of the kind of administrative process of planning. And appeals are from outside, they're not dealt with by the city council members or officers. So councillors elected, they have the democratic mandate in the planning process. Not me, they do, and they obviously have to be elected on a particular ticket one or another. Planning officers like me and the people who work for me are there to advise, and the people who make decisions on planning and developing a local plan, I would hope they listen to the advice along with everything that you tell them, and people who make representations, and specialist technical advisors, but they're not bound by that. And this is an issue that does come up quite a lot. I've got a case study later which kind of hits at this point. The democratic mandate is really important in the whole planning process and the exercise of that. But it has to be brought back to that democratic mandate has to be operated within a framework of national law and policy. So it's not a freedom to just operate and make decisions, as you up from the air. There has to be a relevance to the kind of policy framework. Okay, and I know I keep coming back to saying development plans are important. That's the national policy and law position. We have a development plan which has had extensive engagement up front and development and has been through the democratic process to be developed. That's then the kind of primacy document against which development proposals are judged, and that's a really important kind of golden thread going through all this. We have this thing called material considerations and what you balance against the plan. Okay, so this is a bit dry, isn't it? I said. Okay, how and when to engage. You know that very well, but this is just a bit of flavour of developing the Cambridge local plan, kind of headlines and issues that we face and how engagement happens. And I'd really like kind of people to say, if you were engaged in that local plan, development of the new local plan process, how it felt for you, or what's been your experience. So, doing a local plan for City Council on your behalf, it's a massive investment. We have to have a significant evidence base of understanding of kind of how population's growing, how households are forming, what levels of transport, how people are moving around the city, what are the problems and issues, what are the water issues, what infrastructure do we have. It's a phenomenal task, and the reason we have to do that is because the challenge of the development industry, that we have to have a robust plan in place to plan for the city that will withstand and is the right plan for Cambridge. So on your behalf, using your council tax, it is a phenomenal investment, really important to try and set out the future plan for the city. So issues that were coming up when we started, we had a whole issue kind of loss of pubs and pressure from development. You will have noticed the headline about the kind of Trumpington and Cambridge United and proposals to build in the Greenbelt. Save the Greenbelt, an issue in terms of Greenbelt release in the plan that has galvanised communities in your part of the city, your point. A big petition, lots of engagement. People from Save the Greenbelt have been at the local plan examination, presenting evidence and really engaging in that process. So it's fundamentally important that people do engage in this plan. It's not something that people on the third floor of the Guildhall spend their day beavering over, and it has to reflect, as far as it's possible, as a mediation of all the interests about how the city should grow. That has to come through in the plan. A lot of work was done with the residents' associations across the city. We had, when the last local plan was done in Cambridge in 2005, there were just under 4,000 representations on that plan. This time we've done a 3-stage plan and had over 20,000 representations. So on one level, in terms of getting responses from people, that's a phenomenal amount of feedback to the local authority. You on the other side might say, well, it was almost impossible to get through your online system to make those representations, or you were in access. I think I need to hear your feedback, really, how it went. I'm interested to know if you've been involved in plan making in the city. How was it for you, or do you feel should we do it? Is there a better way of doing it?
Can I give you a very specific example, which kind of points up to me one place where the relationship you explained between officers and councillors breaks down.
Okay.
And that was at the last South Area Committee, which I attended. They discussed the expansion of the 20 mile an hour scheme.
Yeah.
Now, your officers have done a lot of consultation, and they presented all the data to the councillors, and then there was a collective wimping out amongst the councillors. So, for example, the decision to make Queen Edith's Way 20 miles an hour was taken by two councillors voting in favour of it, and everybody else abstained. Now, I can only assume that's because when they come to collect people's votes, they would rather not be in a situation where someone could say, you introduced some regulations that I didn't agree with. Now, can you see why there might be a measure of cynicism that something that potentially significant and far-reaching is introduced after you've done all the work on the vote of two councillors? I personally found that quite disturbing. That's one hole I can see in the system.
Why do you think that was?
Because it was a very heated meeting. There were 4 planning issues, all of which generated vast amounts of discontent from the people there. And I think by the time the 20 mile an hour consultation came up on the agenda, the councillors were running scared of being shot down. So each time there were 4 schemes that were voted on for inclusion in the 20 mile an hour, and each time they were passed with the absolute minimum of councillor participation to actually get it to go through. Brooklands Avenue, Queen Edith's Way, Cherry Hinton Road, far end, and I can't remember what the fourth one was. And it was shocking. You know, that is not democracy as far as I'm concerned. They wouldn't nail their colours to the mast.
What's the better way of making those decisions then?
Secret ballot.
Pardon?
I said secret ballot.
But that's not very open and accountable, is it?
Yeah,
Which is...
I think the councillors try to stay.
Sorry.
Remove the right of councillors try to stay in the committee. That they either have to say yay or nay. That's it.
That would have...
I don't respect a councillor if they
process.
abstain on things that are slightly contentious. We've elected them to make a decision. So why would you respect somebody if they go, oh, actually I might have to come and ask for a vote, so I won't. Then I can say I give you a vote for it.
Does that give councillors an incentive not to turn up though, so that they don't have to vote one way or the other?
They've stood for election. If they can't attend a meeting, they should stand down. So I'm quite militant about them.
What do other people think about...
I think that's a general reflection on the fact that in general councillors are not people who, in order to get elected, you have to basically go around doors, be very friendly to people and deal with basically very local issues in order to get elected. What we don't generally have in Cambridge, and I think a lot of other places, is people who take a very strategic focus. And I think there's a real need for, a big body of, say 50-50, where you have very strategic people who are elected, and look at these big picture things and can sort of say, well, this is a 20 mile an hour zone, there may be residents in the particular street who don't like that, but this is a strategic thing. This is, the effect on, it's not just the people in that particular street who are affected by this, it's the whole area. And then so you need some strategic people, and you need people who are very good at dealing with very localised issues. My neighbour's got blah blah blah. But at the moment we've got basically lots of people on one side and very few are strategic. And I mean, unfortunately, that's the nature of democracy. I think, but I think it's a real problem in a city like Cambridge, which has big strategic problems, and really a lot of councils I think are just not up to that task. Personally, that's my feeling.
I think, yeah, I wouldn't say they're not up to the task. I think the difficulty is that we are expecting them to be able to sift the evidence in a way that isn't possible for them to do, given the wide responsibilities and the wide amounts of evidence. So although you might have somebody like a pressure group who knows everything about nothing, the councillor has to know nothing about everything. And it's quite difficult to know what you do to help the councillors make good informed decisions, rather than just feel that they're being beaten by one small group. So I've got sympathies there, although I'm a member of a somewhat influential pressure group.
May I test something on you? One thing we didn't do with the local plan was use opinion research as a kind of objective, not counterweight, but an objective method of getting that sort of feedback separate from all the normal consultation methods and engagement methods we use. And it's something, you know, I wonder if there's a role for that. You have the officer's advice, you have, as you said, you know, people who are objecting, councillors are in the middle trying to make a decision on all of this. Where do they look to? They bring their skills and experience of life they're drawn from the communities they represent. Decision making is really difficult for the reasons that you said. Would something like opinion research alongside, you know, objective, done by an outside trusted body that, you know, we would all feel comfortable with the objectivity of what they were saying, be helpful in the decision making process in Cambridge, used in the right way and on the right things?
I should be one of the tools.
Sorry?
It should be one of the tools.
Okay, because we don't use that very often
Yeah.
at the moment.
I think if you carried out that kind of research, you'd have a similar problem that the planning process has, is that you get the same people responding, and those people you really want to hear from either won't respond or feel intimidated to do that. And I think that I used to work for the RTPI, and I used to promote Planning Aid, which is all about community planning, helping people who can't afford to get involved in planning, engage in not just responding to applications, but putting together a local plan before the neighbourhood planning. And it was incredibly difficult to get people to bother to turn up on a Saturday like this and get involved. And most of the people here are here because they've got an interest. My two young brothers are off doing something completely different. But actually we should be talking to them about what they want from the city. And I think so if you did the research, it costs a lot of money, because you have to go out, sit someone down and say, right, I know you don't want to do this, but take 5 minutes because it's gonna really have a big impact on your life. And I think that's the real challenge. And especially somewhere like Cambridge, in other parts of the country it's easier, but in Cambridge it's incredibly intimidating for people because everyone's so well informed. If you're not well informed, you just want to hide and not get involved.
I think that's, you know, part of the challenge, isn't it? That people self-select and are engaged and really interested, and we don't, you know, the people who want to get their views known are, you know, it's, I won't say it's easy, but, you know, that's something that people are quite good at doing. I'd be interested to know, sorry, you and then...
I think strategy is something, if you look at it at the national level, strategy is something that is cosseted by permanent private secretaries and their staff, and then is explained to the minister, who then takes it in bite sizes, because the MPs have got so many things on their plate, just like councillors, different topics, social welfare, medicine, and so on. And the only way I see it improving, I think it is actually improving, is that strategy needs to be clearly available on websites, so those who are interested begin to see the argument. You don't just look at maps. You've got to have the polemic with it, you've got to have the details with it. Why you reach this conclusion, why you believe this is beneficial to the bulk of the people in the community. And it's a big community, 125,000 now, is it, Cambridge? So I think things can improve because it's so much easier to get at that information, but whether that information is out there to be read and scrutinised is arguable.
And, you know, it still brings you back to somebody who's got to make a decision, haven't they?
Oh, you've always got to make a decision.
Yeah.
Councillors, just like MPs, have got to take an individual thing and say that's the majority view. I won't be prejudiced in the next election by that view.
You were first and then the gentleman.
Yes, I mean, I just suspect that many people are cynical about the consultation process because they don't actually understand what happens as a result of it and what obligations, or I'm not sure myself actually, maybe you could just very briefly tell us how the consultations for decisions like that are used and what weight is attached to them and by whom, and the role of both officers and elected councillors in responding to those consultations. Because if people have a sort of perception, I've never been involved and I can't be bothered to be involved because it's not going to make any difference, rightly or wrongly, one's either got to help inform, you know, about what the actual process is, or change the process if for some reason or another it's not working satisfactorily.
Those are really good points, I think, in terms of, you know, when we do consultations, we probably do the sorts of things, there's a whole plethora, isn't there, from newspaper articles, website, Twitter, social media. We probably need to develop greater skills, and I'd certainly be interested in what kind of Francesco thinks about how on earth we can make engagement in planning and things like that more interesting and accessible to younger people. So I think, you know, there are methods that are used, and the City Council, you know I would say this, tries very hard to get information out and, you know, to consult and engage in a variety of methods. There's probably a lot more that we could do in different ways, and I'm really interested to hear kind of what you think about that. I don't know how we, you know, the starting point for doing that is not to do it in a tokenistic way. It is genuinely to get the feedback, to have an understanding of the thing that we're consulting on, what people think about it, and also if we've not, you know, if there are other ideas out there or ways of doing it, so we can actually take them into account. Development decisions last a long time and they touch people's lives, you know, hugely, and you know, Cambridge is absolutely unique. So if we're not making the right decision for the future planning here, you know, we've got to take those decisions really carefully.
But I think government, I think your view is always to be invoked what the government expects of Cambridge, because that's always the first thing. I mean, you put it on your list earlier. Starts at the top. They say we see Cambridge as not just white hot, you know, nuclear almost in terms of the future, and that informs what you can and cannot do to a rather large extent, and the county council, because there's this sort of clash so often over the years. I've lived in Cambridge since the 50s. So many times you've seen things that the city residents want squashed by the county council because they see it as deleterious to the people who live beyond Cambridge. And it might be, I don't know, it may be a lot of things are irreconcilable.
I think you're right, there are tensions there. We have a national planning process and we have government policy, and there's a prescribed way that we have to develop a local plan so that it can be seen as a sound plan. But it, you know, there isn't a blueprint from government saying this is the plan for Cambridge, built all over the green belt.
No, they don't give you a plan. They tell you what they expect Cambridge to deliver.
They do,
quite different.
And things like we have to identify what development needs we're planning for, homes and jobs numbers. We have, you know, we're expected to look at that, and obviously then moving from those numbers into where's the supply of land in which, you know, we'll meet those needs. Those are local choices and very, you know, very controversial and kind of winners and losers in some of those arguments.
I think just also too, I used to work for the government department responsible for local councils, the Department for Communities and Local Government. And one of the, and it was my experience of looking how other councils were structured, is also one of the reasons why we organised this event. In one of the other workshops, they're having an interesting discussion about how Cambridge as a city should run. A number of you mentioned the city-county split, and I think one of the things the city deal process is trying to overcome, in particular with transport, is that separation of something at an institutional level between what the city desires and what the county desires. Often as officials, where you're dealing with two separate institutions that have different party political slants or different party political leads, it can make things very, very difficult. One thing that's happened in recent years, and also very, very recently, and in the past really 3 to 6 months with the city deal structures, is they're trying to overcome that. Just to reconfirm, certainly as far as this project is concerned for Be the Change Cambridge, we have defined Cambridge by the people that make up the city. That includes people who commute in and work, people who come in to study, not just the people who live within the geographical boundaries or who live within the administrative boundary of Cambridge City. Because one of the conversations we want to get going is that conversation between people who live outside of the city versus, as well having conversations with people who live inside the city to see if together they can say, well actually, here's a shared solution.
Okay. Did I get around this side? No, you were next.
I was just going to give you a bit of feedback on the original question, which seems quite a long time ago now, but you were asking about opinion kind of poll data on questions about development. And actually, I was just going to comment, I was at the same meeting that this lady was, whose name I've forgotten, about the 20 miles per hour in the South Area Committee. And one of the things that I found interesting, and in some ways slightly disappointing actually, was that the councillors there took the opinion poll data, which wasn't complete because it was only based on the respondents, and treated it almost as though it was a plebiscite, and actually that they were bound by the opinion poll data that came back. There was so little discussion of actually, right, this many people responded out of the many people, and here is our responsibility as councillors to engage with the opinions of the people who responded and the wider debate. They just said, oh, this has clearly got a favour of 20 miles per hour based on the people who responded, therefore they took about 10 roads in one go and just voted it through, admittedly with only about 2 of them voting. So
I'm not entirely sure what road they were actually talking
well,
about.
yes, indeed. That was a particularly chaotic event. So, in terms of, I don't know how much data you have fed back, but actually, if you want to put pressure on the councillors, apparently, some of them will just take your opinion poll data as normal. And I don't think that should be the case. But if you want to understand how, from sitting in area committees, how your information you provide through your offices is taken by the councillors, at least in that example, it's quite powerful.
Thank you for that. I mean, I think that wasn't objective opinion poll research, it was a letter to all households. So in a sense, the feedback relies on kind of motivated respondents, you know, letting the council know their view. I think my question was, you know, is there a way that we can provide some slightly objective research to sit along some of these decisions that would help, would give an overall picture of what people think, not just the people who, you know, are very kindly taking the time to give us their views back. The silent people who it is harder to. We need to know people who approve things. Not, you know, a lot of people don't reply. They think that's fine. I'm happy with that, or that could be the assumption that we might take if we don't hear that they are fine, as well as the people who aren't fine with these things.
I say, Patsy, you've got about 5 minutes
Okay.
left.
Right. You know about Cambridge Local Plan. I've mentioned that.
But if you really need to overrun, that's fine.
Okay, I'll keep going. You know about all these things.
Right, my question was actually about the IDOC's planning site, which doesn't, which is just awful. You can't. It's difficult to link directly to a thing, so you're instantly going to lose people who are interested because it's too difficult to find the application.
You can't link to a direct document.
Yeah,
it's appalling.
finding which documents are important. You know, I'm regularly looking at planning applications and I'm still learning about it, but somebody who's interested in just one application that affects them, it's very difficult to sift through the information and work out what you want to find.
That's exactly what I was hoping to discuss in the workshop that I pitched, because I think that model and then feeding through into the online repository where the data is actually allegedly accessible is completely broken for anyone who either has something in their life to do other than vet planning applications, or who, you know, is a total planning nerd and can interpret the code and know where to go for the specific information that they're looking for. And like Hester, I've been becoming more and more prone, sadly, to spending time looking at the planning portal. And it works fine for Mrs. Smith who wants to extend her kitchen, but for things like Adam Brooks Roundabout, it is a nightmare.
You won't find Adam Brooks Roundabout on.
No.
Yes, I know.
And that's the thing. It's the different system, isn't it? How would you feel about meeting up afterwards to talk about how we can do better?
I would love to.
Okay. Let's do that. Let me take your details before. We'll find a convenient time and place.
Yep.
Chat about that.
Two things on that. Firstly, I'm working in an organisation called Cycle Streets, and we're currently liaising with someone who's working on a system to scrape every council's website of planning applications, put it on a map, and enable you to, for example, receive alerts when stuff's in your area. If anyone knows of £25,000 that would enable us to finish the job, I'd be very grateful, because I think there's, I mean, one of the problems as someone in Cambridge Cycling Bain who is that you often find about planning applications way too late. People need to know straight away.
You can set yourself an alert.
It's hard work. It's very hard work.
And you have to do
It's very hard work.
Get a weekly list sent to you every week.
It
does have functionality.
That's not good enough for what people expect in one age. I don't want to have to spend 10 minutes every week going through the PDF just in case there's something in my area.
Well, and also, I think the
It's
point
an old-fashioned way of doing
Anthony
it.
was making about a greater Cambridge, you know, if someone is driving from Milton down to the biomedical campus, how many alerts are they supposed to set to track changes along their route? I mean, it's just...
Yeah. But I also wanted to follow up something which was just said, I mean, about the Adam Brooks Roundabout, for example, which isn't a planning application. There's a big hole in the planning system at the moment, which is that basically transport changes that accompany a planning application are lumped in that planning application as a planning matter. They're not dealt with as a transport issue. So, for example, on North West Cambridge, there have been some junctions there, and basically if you're interested in North West Cambridge and Huntingdon Road, you're deemed to have sort of gone to this planning application that you found in Alpha Centauri Planning Office and responded on it. Whereas if it's a council consultation on transport, there's an enormous amount of effort. Everyone hears about it.
What would you like?
I think
What would
basically
it look like?
transport parts of planning applications need to be dealt with in the same way that council transport ones. Just because the developer is funding a massive change to a road versus the county funding, it should make no difference. In both cases, they're exactly the same public interest issues. And I mean, you know, if the council, for example, had proposed to slice a lay-by out of a bit of Mill Road, to take a pavement out of Mill Road for the development there, there'd be uproar. Yet this is just lumped in as a small matter within the plan application. No one knows about it, and no one responds. They're completely.
I think quite a lot of people knew about that one.
Well, okay, but I mean, you know, they're treated in very different ways, and I think particularly on large developments that involve, for example, major changes to major roads, junctions, and so on. Just to lump that in the planning application when there's with a 12-week period without really as just one of a number of technical matters is the wrong way to approach it. The council's got to find some way within this legal framework, which I agree is a difficult one, to treat these as proper transport consultations in the same way as a council one would be.
Okay, Jim.
Yeah, I think it's basically this phrase which those of us who are nerds in this area know, subject to section 106, and what it means is that the council rubber stamps the agreement, but there is a large amount of stuff which is then non-negotiated effectively behind closed doors. And so that you find the situation that changes to the road layout may take place without even the local councillor being aware it's going to happen. And I think that's the thing, because those are the things which often have big implications. The Premier Inn changes at Coldham's Lane, Newmarket Road, and things like that, which need to be done. And I understand there is a difficulty about the timescale, because you're under a legal obligation to I understand that often you have your hands tied behind your backs, and there's a legal obligation to do things in a particular timescale. I also have concerns about the way in which you also have that hand tied behind your backs, in that if you reject an application and it goes to appeal and you lose on the appeal, you have to carry all the costs of the appeal. And that puts you in a difficult situation, and councillors have told me before, well, we couldn't afford to refuse that one.
But also,
But
moreover,
let's think about what we can do, not about what our hands are.
Yeah, well, I'm saying, but what I'm saying, how do we untie your hands? How do we work better with you to make sure that we don't get these issues?
but there's also the issue that the county council transport advice, which feeds into the plan application, is at no stage whatsoever challengeable by members of the public. The county council gives their view. The city council councillors may disagree with that, and if it goes to appeal, the inspector will say, well, this is what the county council or the expert said.
Authority.
At no point has actually that county view ever been consulted on.
Can I just check? It's £20 if you want to go to other workshops. We can carry on from if you're happy, it's really on.
Isn't there supposed to be another one in here?
Yeah.
Cycling.
All right. Well, nobody's burst in. All right. Well, we probably better wrap it up then. One last question, and then if you'll...
I just wanted to quickly comment that I agree that the current planning site needs to be updated and more user-friendly, and should probably also be mobile optimized.
I'll take that back. I'm really happy to meet with people separately to try and have a discussion about what's possible with that, what we can do, and what it is. Can't quite finish, but thank you all very much. That was really helpful. I don't know if you've got anything out of that, but I found that really interesting, and thank you for your feedback. Thank you. Okay.